The rust-colored sky of Valeria Prime hung heavy over the colony's central administrative hub, its twin suns casting long shadows across the prefabricated structures that housed 12,000 souls. Governor Mara Voss stood at the viewport of her office, hands clasped behind her back, watching miners trudge home from the morning shift. Their shoulders slumped with exhaustion, faces obscured by protective masks that filtered the planet's mineral-laden atmosphere. Valeria Prime had never been beautiful. Its value lay beneath the craggy surface, rare ores and crystalline deposits that powered faster-than-light engines across Confederation space. Yet this barren rock was home to thousands who had carved out lives on the frontier, and Mara had sworn to protect them when she accepted the governorship 3 standard years ago. A sharp chime broke her reverie. Her aide's voice crackled through the intercom. "Governor, Commander Tan requests an urgent meeting." Mara sighed. Elias Tan, head of Valeria's modest militia, had been pushing for increased security funding for months. The Confederation's response had been the same each time. Resources allocated according to strategic priority. As a remote mining outpost at the edge of civilized space, Valeria Prime ranked low on that list. "Send him in," she said, turning from the viewport to face her sparse office. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing Tan's tall figure. His normally composed features were tense, dark eyes wide with alarm. "Governor," he said without preamble, "our long-range sensors have detected multiple ships entering the system." Mara felt her stomach tighten. "Confederation supply vessels?" Tan shook his head, laying a datapad on her desk. "Unidentified. Moving in formation. Size and energy signatures suggest—" He hesitated. "Suggest what, Commander?" "A Vraxian dreadnought armada." The words hung in the air between them. Vraxians, the aggressive, expansionist empire that had been pressing against Confederation borders for decades. They were known for their ruthlessness, their technological superiority, and their complete disregard for civilian casualties. "How long?" Mara asked, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. 48 hours until they reach orbital range," Tan replied. "But they'll be close enough to launch probes or fighters much sooner." Mara moved to her console, fingers flying across the interface. "I'm sending an emergency distress call to Confederation Command. Get your people ready. Commander, Level 2 alert status, but keep it quiet for now. No need to start a panic." Tan nodded sharply. "What do you think they want?" "What they always want," Mara replied grimly. "Territory, resources, submission." She looked up at him, resolve hardening her features. "Things we can't give them." After Tan left, Mara recorded her distress call, detailing the colony's situation and requesting immediate military support. The message would take 12 hours to reach the nearest Confederation relay station. Even if they dispatched a response fleet immediately, help wouldn't arrive for days. She sat back in her chair, staring at the confirmation of transmission on her screen. 12,000 lives under her care. A militia of barely 300, with outdated weapons and minimal orbital defenses. "Hold on," she whispered to herself. "Just hold on." By the next morning, the news had spread. Mara had made an announcement to the colony, carefully balancing honesty with the need to maintain calm. Citizens gathered in small groups throughout the settlement, voices hushed, eyes scanning the sky as though they might spot the approaching threat. In the colony's central command center, a converted mining administration building, Mara convened an emergency meeting with her leadership council. Commander Tan stood beside a holographic display showing the Vraxian fleet's approach. Councillor Rhea Sol, representing the civilian government, sat with arms crossed, her elegant features pulled into a scowl. Next to her, Dr. Lian Wu, head of the colony's engineering division, fidgeted nervously with a datapad. "Our sensors confirm 23 vessels," Tan said. 1 primary dreadnought, 16 destroyers, and support craft. They're maintaining tight formation and haven't responded to our hails. Have we received any word from the Confederation? Sewell asked, directing her question to Mara. Nothing yet, Mara replied. The distress call should have reached them hours ago. Saul laughed bitterly. And you expect them to come? We're an accounting entry on their resource ledgers. Governor. Nothing more. We're Confederation citizens, Mara countered. They have an obligation to protect us. Tell that to Proxima Colony, Sewell shot back. Or haven't you heard what happened there when the Vraxians came? The room fell silent. Everyone had heard the reports. An entire settlement wiped out. Thousands dead. The survivors enslaved in mining operations now controlled by Vraxian overseers. Dr. Wu cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss evacuation protocols. We have enough transport vessels to move approximately 30% of the population. And leave 70% behind? Mara shook her head. No, we stand together. With what? Sewell demanded. 300 militia against a Vraxian armada? That's not bravery. Governor, it's suicide. Before Mara could respond, the communications officer called out from her station. Governor, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Vraxian vessel. Mara straightened her uniform jacket. Put it through. The holographic display shifted, and a figure materialized above the projector. The Vraxian admiral stood nearly 7 feet tall, his scaled skin a mottled gray-green, yellow eyes gleaming with cold intelligence. A series of ridged plates ran from his forehead down his neck, disappearing beneath an ornate military uniform. I am Admiral Kar Vrax of the Vraxian Imperium, the figure announced. Voice a guttural rumble, translated through the colony's communication system. Your world has been claimed for the glory of the Imperium. You will surrender all resources, infrastructure, and submit to Vraxian authority. Mara stepped forward. This is Governor Maravos of Valeria Prime. We are a sovereign colony under Confederation protection. We will not surrender. The Vraxian's mouth pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of pointed teeth. Protection. I see no Confederation vessels in your system. Governor, you are alone. We have sent distress calls, Mara said firmly. Confederation forces are on their way. A futile gesture, Vrax replied. By the time your message reaches your masters, this colony will be under Imperium control. He leaned closer to the camera. I offer terms. Surrender within 36 hours, and your people will be permitted to live as productive subjects of the Imperium. Resist, and we will reduce your settlement to ash. The transmission cut out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Well, Sewell said after a moment, now we know what they want. And now they know we've called for help, Tan added grimly. They'll move quickly. Mara turned to face her counsel. Commander, I want a full defensive assessment within the hour. Dr. Wu, work with your engineers to reinforce our critical infrastructure. Counselor Saul, organize community leaders to prepare emergency shelters. She looked at each of them in turn. We have 36 hours to make this colony as defensible as possible. Let's make them count. As the council dispersed, Mara felt the weight of 12,000 lives pressing down on her shoulders. She'd meant what she said to Admiral Vrax. They would not surrender. But she'd also told a half-truth. There was no guarantee the Confederation would send help in time, or at all. Valeria Prime truly was alone. The first Vraxian probes entered Valeria's atmosphere 18 hours later. Sleek, silver craft that darted through the colony's defensive perimeter with ease. The militia's ground-to-air batteries tracked them, but Commander Tan held his fire, aware that engaging might trigger a full-scale assault before they were ready. Mara watched from the command center as the probes circled the settlement, scanning buildings, infrastructure, and defense installations. They're mapping us, Tan said, standing beside her, identifying targets. How are our preparations coming? Mara asked. We've distributed what weapons we have, positioned our batteries for maximum coverage, and established fallback positions throughout the colony. Dr. Wu's team has reinforced the power grid and medical facilities. Tan paused. It won't be enough if they launch a full orbital bombardment. Then we make sure they want to take the colony intact, Mara replied. The mines are valuable to them, more valuable with infrastructure and workers. A sudden alarm blared through the command center. On the main display, one of the probes descended toward the colony's main power distribution hub. They're making a move on the power grid, Tan said, grabbing his communications unit. Defense teams to Sector 7. Mara watched as militia personnel scrambled to intercept the probe, but they were too late. A bright flash erupted from the craft, and the command center's lights flickered and died. Emergency power engaged seconds later, bathing everything in red. Direct hit on the main transformer, reported the operations officer. We're on backup power. Residential sectors 3 through 9 are completely dark. Casualties? Mara demanded. Reports coming in now. At least 12 confirmed dead, dozens injured. Tan's face hardened. Governor, we can't let them pick us apart like this. Mara nodded. Take them out, Commander. Tan relayed the order, and moments later, the colony's defense batteries opened fire. 2 of the probes exploded in brilliant flashes against the darkening sky. The others ascended rapidly, retreating beyond the atmosphere. They'll be back, Tan said. And next time, it won't be probes. I know, Mara replied. But we've shown them we can bite back. She turned to the communications officer. Any response to our distress call? Nothing, Governor. Mara's jaw tightened. Keep broadcasting. Every frequency. Every channel. She faced her command staff. Get medical teams to the affected sectors. I want damage control and power restoration as top priorities. As the staff hurried to execute her orders, Counselor Saul approached, her usual composure replaced by barely contained panic. This is only the beginning, Saul hissed, grabbing Mara's arm. They disabled our power grid with a single strike. Imagine what their dreadnought will do. We're not beaten yet, Mara replied, pulling free of Saul's grip. No? Then where is your Confederation fleet? Where are these allies you promised would come to our rescue? Saul's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby staff. You're going to get us all killed with your stubbornness. Counselor, Mara said firmly, either help with the emergency response or remove yourself from my command center. Saul's face flushed with anger. The council will hear about this. She turned on her heel and stormed out. Tan moved to Mara's side. She's scared. They all are. I know, Mara sighed. So am I. But fear won't save this colony. She straightened her shoulders. Let's get to work. By the second day, the situation had deteriorated rapidly. The Vraxian fleet maintained its position just beyond the range of Valeria's meager orbital defenses, but continued to launch fighter strikes against key infrastructure. The colony's medical facilities were overwhelmed with casualties. Power was intermittent across most sectors. Mara had established a guerrilla defense strategy, moving militia teams constantly to prevent the Vraxians from pinpointing their positions. They'd managed to down 3 enemy fighters, but at the cost of depleting their limited missile stockpile. In her makeshift headquarters, the command center having been evacuated after a near miss from a Vraxian bombing run, Mara reviewed reports of the latest attacks. Her uniform was stained with sweat and dust, dark circles under her eyes betraying her lack of sleep. Commander Tan entered, his right arm bound in a hasty bandage. The mining sector is secure for now, he reported. We've moved the remaining heavy equipment underground. Good, Mara nodded. Any word from our scouts about the supply depot strike? Successful. Tan allowed himself a small smile. They hit a Vraxian supply convoy trying to establish a forward base in the northern ridge. 3 enemy transports destroyed. Mara returned the smile. At least we're making them work for it. Her expression sobered. Casualties? 2 of our team didn't make it back. Another weight on her conscience. Mara pushed the grief aside. There would be time for mourning later, if they survived. "What about the Confederation?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Tan shook his head. "Still no response to our signals." Mara slammed her fist against the table. "Damn them! We've paid our taxes, shipped our ore, followed their regulations. Where are they now when we need them?" Before Tan could respond, Dr. Lian Wu burst into the room, breathing heavily as though he'd been running. The normally composed engineer's eyes were wide with excitement. "Governor, Commander, I need you to come with me immediately!" "Dr. Wu, we're in the middle of a crisis," Mara began. "Trust me," Wu interrupted. "This is important. It could change everything." Mara and Tan exchanged glances. "Lead the way," Mara said. Wu guided them through the colony's underground service tunnels, a labyrinth originally built to maintain the complex heating systems that made the planet's harsh surface habitable. After nearly 20 minutes of walking, they reached an old maintenance hatch that appeared to have been recently cleared of decades of dust. "I found this while we were setting up the auxiliary power routing," Wu explained, inputting a code into the ancient keypad beside the hatch. According to colony records, this section was sealed during the initial settlement phase, nearly 70 years ago. The hatch slid open with a protesting groan, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. Wu activated a portable light, illuminating what lay inside. Mara gasped. The chamber contained row upon row of massive railguns, electromagnetic weapons capable of launching projectiles at devastating velocities. They were older models, clearly from the early days of the colony, but their size and number were impressive. "Are they operational?" Tan asked, running his hand along one of the massive barrels. "Not currently," Wu admitted, "but my team has examined them. With some work, we could get at least 3 of them functioning." "How long?" Mara asked. 24 hours, maybe less if I pull in all available engineers." Mara's mind raced. The railguns were powerful enough to pose a threat to the Vraxian vessels, even from the planet's surface. But using them would also reveal their existence, potentially provoking an immediate full-scale attack. "Do it," she decided. "But keep this absolutely quiet. Security level 1. Essential personnel only." Wu nodded eagerly. "I'll get started right away." As the engineer hurried off to assemble his team, Tan turned to Mara. "This changes things." "Maybe," Mara cautioned. "It gives us a punch we didn't have before, but we're still outnumbered and outgunned." "Sometimes one good punch is all you need," Tan replied. "If you landed in the right place." "Let's hope so," Mara said, "because our time is running out." While Dr. Wu and his engineers worked frantically to restore the railguns, tensions within the colony's leadership reached a breaking point. Councillor Saul had called an emergency session of the Civilian Council, challenging Mara's authority to continue resistance against the Vraxians. "Governor Voss is leading us to annihilation," Saul declared to the assembled representatives. "The Vraxians have offered terms. We can survive as part of their imperium." "As slaves," countered one of the council members. "As alive," Saul shot back. "Which is more than we'll be if we continue this pointless resistance." Word of the council meeting reached Mara as she coordinated defense against another wave of Vraxian fighters. She dispatched Commander Tan to handle the immediate threat and made her way to the council chambers, a converted storage facility deep within the colony's subterranean levels. She entered to find the council in heated debate, voices echoing off the metal walls. Saul stood at the center, commanding the room with the practiced ease of a career politician. "The Confederation has abandoned us," Saul was saying. "No help is coming. We must save ourselves." "By surrendering?" Mara interrupted, striding forward. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "Have you forgotten what happened on Proxima Colony? The Vraxians executed every government official and military leader after the surrender. Those who weren't killed were worked to death in the mines." Saul raised her chin defiantly. "At least some survived. Better than the total destruction you're leading us toward." You don't know that's where we're headed, Mara countered. We've held them off for 2 days. We've damaged their vessels, disrupted their ground operations. And lost how many of our people in the process? Sol demanded. How many more must die for your pride, Governor? Mara felt anger flare within her. This isn't about pride. It's about freedom. About not bowing to tyrants who see us as nothing but resources to be exploited. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each council member. We are Valyrian colonists. Our ancestors came to this harsh world and built something from nothing. They faced storms, radiation, famine, and survived. We have their blood in our veins. She stepped closer to Sol. The Vraxians think we're weak because we're few. They think we'll break because we're isolated. They're wrong. Every hour we resist sends a message across the stars. Valyria Prime will not fall easily. A murmur of approval rippled through the council. Sol's supporters shifted uncomfortably. Fine words, Sol said dismissively. But words won't stop Vraxian warships. No, Mara agreed. But we have more than words. She had not planned to reveal the railguns yet, but she needed to counter Sol's defeatism. Our engineers have discovered weapon systems from the colony's founding, powerful enough to threaten even the Vraxian dreadnought. Excited whispers broke out among the council. Sol's face registered shock, then suspicion. If such weapons exist, why haven't they been deployed already? They're being prepared now, Mara replied. I came here to request your support in organizing civilian volunteers to assist with their installation. Before Sol could respond, Mara's communication device chimed urgently. It was Tan. Governor. His voice was tight with tension. The Vraxian command ship is broadcasting again. Admiral Vrax is demanding to speak with you. Mara looked at the council. It seems our deadline approaches. Will you stand with me? One by one, the council members nodded, some reluctantly, others with newfound resolve. Only Sol and her closest allies remained opposed, their faces masks of resentment. Very well, Mara said. Commander Tan, tell Admiral Vrax I'm on my way. In the command center, now restored to partial functionality, Mara stood before the communications array. Commander Tan and several militia officers flanked her, presenting a united front. Open the channel, Mara ordered. Admiral Vrax's imposing figure appeared in the holographic display. His yellow eyes gleamed with impatience. Governor Voss, he growled. Your time expires. What is your answer? Mara met his gaze unflinchingly. The same as before. Admiral, Valyria Prime will not surrender. Vrax's scaled features contorted in what might have been amusement. Your resistance has been unexpected. Your fighters show skill, but it changes nothing. He leaned forward. My dreadnought is now in position. In 6 hours, I will begin planetary bombardment, targeting your main settlement. Your defense batteries cannot stop us. Perhaps, Mara conceded, but we will extract a price for every Valyrian life you take. A price? Vrax laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Your colony will be dust beneath our boots. Then why offer terms at all? Mara challenged. Why not simply destroy us from orbit when you arrived? Vrax's eyes narrowed. The Imperium is not wasteful. Governor, your mines have value. Your people could serve as labor. But my patience has limits. As does ours, Mara replied coldly. Valyria Prime to Admiral Vrax. Go to hell. She signaled to cut the transmission. Vrax's image flickered and vanished. 6 hours, Tan said quietly. Mara nodded. Get me Dr. Wu. I need to know if those railguns will be ready in time. In the cavernous underground chamber, Dr. Wu's team worked feverishly on the ancient railguns. Components had been stripped from non-essential systems throughout the colony to replace damaged parts. Engineers crawled over the massive weapons, welding, rewiring, calibrating. Wu himself was barely visible. his upper body buried deep within the control mechanism of the central railgun. When Mara called his name, he extracted himself, face streaked with grease and exhaustion. "Governor," he acknowledged, wiping his hands on a rag. "We're making progress." "We need more than progress, Doctor," Mara said urgently. "The Vraxians begin their bombardment in less than 6 hours." Wu's expression grew serious. "We'll have this one operational in 4. The others will take longer." "One will have to do," Mara replied. "What's its range, its power?" "Range is excellent. These were designed for orbital defense. Power." Wu hesitated. "The magnetic accelerators are still at 80% capacity after all these years. A direct hit could cripple even a dreadnought." "But we'll only get one shot," Tan interjected. "The moment we fire, they'll target this position with everything they have." "Then we make it count," Mara said firmly. "Dr. Wu, I need firing solutions calculated for the Vraxian command ship. Commander Tan, prepare evacuation routes from this facility the moment we launch." As they discussed final preparations, a commotion erupted at the chamber entrance. Militia guards were restraining someone, Counselor Saul. Her face flushed with anger. "Let me pass," she demanded. "I need to speak with the governor immediately." Mara signaled to the guards. "Let her through." Saul strode forward, her gaze darting around the chamber, taking in the massive railguns and bustling activity. "So it's true," she said. "You actually have weapons." "As I told the council," Mara replied coolly. "What do you want, Counselor?" Saul stepped closer, lowering her voice. "A Vraxian shuttle landed 30 minutes ago in the abandoned mining sector. They've sent representatives to discuss terms privately." Mara stiffened. "And you know this how?" Saul's eyes dropped briefly. I arranged it before the council meeting. A back-channel communication." "You did what?" Tan moved forward aggressively, but Mara held up a hand to stop him. "You contacted the enemy without authorization," Mara said, her voice dangerously quiet. "That's treason, Counselor." "It's survival," Saul hissed. "They're willing to speak with a delegation of council members to arrange evacuation of children and medical patients. It's more than you've achieved with your defiance." Mara studied Saul's face, seeing not just fear, but genuine concern for the colony's civilians. Misguided, perhaps, but not malicious. "Where is this meeting to take place?" she asked. "Storage Facility B, near the old processing plant," Saul replied. "In 1 hour." Mara exchanged glances with Tan. The commander gave a slight nod. They both recognized the opportunity this presented. "Very well, Counselor," Mara said. "You've opened a dialogue, now let me use it." Saul blinked in surprise. "You'll meet with them?" "No," Mara shook her head. "That would give the wrong impression. You will go, as the council's representative, express our willingness to discuss civilian evacuation only." "And meanwhile?" Sewell asked suspiciously. "Meanwhile, we continue our preparations." Mara gestured to the railguns. "Keep them talking as long as possible. Every minute buys us time." Saul seemed to wrestle with herself for a moment. Finally, she nodded. "For the children and the wounded. I'll do it. But don't mistake this for support of your overall strategy. Governor." "Noted, Counselor," Mara replied dryly. "Now go." "And Saul," she called as the counselor turned to leave. "Be careful. The Vraxians aren't known for honoring their word." After Saul departed, Tan turned to Mara. "You trust her?" "Not entirely," Mara admitted. "But she'll do what she thinks is best for the colony." She looked at the railgun, its massive barrel gleaming under the harsh lights. "And so will we." While Saul attended her meeting with the Vraxian representatives, Mara coordinated final preparations throughout the colony. Civilians were moved to the deepest shelters, militia teams positioned for maximum coverage, and essential supplies secured. Dr. Wu's team worked tirelessly on the railgun, overcoming setbacks with ingenious solutions born of desperation. 4 hours before the Vraxians' deadline. Wu reported success. The central railgun was operational, with enough power for 3 shots before its ancient capacitors would need recharging. We've linked it to the colony's sensor array, Wu explained, leading Mara and Tan through the firing sequence. Once we have target lock, the magnetic accelerators will launch the projectile at approximately 15% of light speed. Enough to penetrate their shields? Tan asked. Theoretically, Wu replied. Their technology is advanced, but physics is physics. Nothing can completely negate that kind of kinetic impact. A militia lieutenant burst into the chamber. Governor, Commander, Counselor Saul has returned from the meeting. She's brought someone with her. Mara frowned. Brought someone? Who? A Vraxian officer, the lieutenant reported. Says he's Admiral Vrax's envoy. Mara and Tan hurried to the secure conference room where Saul waited. Beside her stood a Vraxian male. Smaller than Admiral Vrax, but still imposing. His scaled skin darker and uniform less ornate. Governor Voss, Saul began awkwardly. This is Sub-Commander Krell of the Vraxian Imperium. The Vraxian inclined his head slightly. Governor. Mara maintained a neutral expression, though inwardly she seethed at Saul's presumption in bringing an enemy officer into their headquarters. Sub-Commander, she acknowledged coldly. I understand you've been discussing terms with Counselor Saul. Preliminary arrangements only, Krell replied, his translator rendering his guttural language into flat, emotionless standard. Admiral Vrax authorized me to negotiate the orderly evacuation of your non-combatants before bombardment commences. How generous, Mara said, not bothering to hide her sarcasm. And what assurances do we have that these evacuees won't simply become slave labor for your mines? Krell's yellow eyes blinked slowly. The Imperium values efficient workers. Those who cooperate prosper. Those who resist. He left the implication hanging. I've seen the reports from other colonies you've valued, Mara countered. Starvation, abuse, execution for the slightest infractions. Propaganda, Krell dismissed with a wave of his clawed hand. The Confederation fills your heads with lies about us. The Confederation has filled our heads with nothing lately, Mara replied bitterly. They've abandoned us to face you alone. Something like satisfaction flickered across Krell's alien features. Then, you understand your situation. You are isolated, forgotten. The Imperium, at least, recognizes your value. As resources to be exploited. As assets to be managed, Krell corrected. Admiral Vrax respects your resistance. It shows spirit. Spirit can be harnessed, directed to productive ends. Mara studied the Vraxian, an idea forming. Your admiral respects our resistance? Perhaps he'd be willing to extend his deadline. Allow us time to organize an orderly surrender. Saul shot her a startled look, which Mara ignored. Krell considered the request. How much time? 24 hours, Mara suggested. To prepare our people, secure critical systems, organize records. The Vraxian's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What guarantee do we have that you won't use this time to strengthen defenses or call for help? What help would come? Mara spread her hands. As you said, we're isolated, and your fleet monitors all transmissions from our planet. You would know immediately if we violated the terms. Krell was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing the proposal. Finally, he nodded. I will convey your request to Admiral Vrax, but I make no promises. That's all I ask, Mara said with carefully measured gratitude. After the Vraxian departed, escorted by militia guards to the surface, Saul rounded on Mara. What game are you playing, Governor? One moment you speak of defiance to the death, the next you beg for time to surrender? Mara checked that the room was secure before answering. We need time. Counselor, the railgun is operational, but our firing solutions need refinement. If we can delay their bombardment, we increase our chances of a crippling first strike. Understanding dawned on Saul's face. You never intended to surrender.
No,
Mara confirmed.
but the Vraxians don't need to know that.
Saul shook her head slowly. You're gambling with 12,000 lives.
I'm fighting for 12,000 lives.
Mara corrected. There's a difference. Admiral Vrax granted a 12-hour extension, half of what Mara had requested, but enough to complete preparations for the railgun strike. As the new deadline approached, the colony hummed with tense activity. In the underground chamber, Dr. Wu made final adjustments to the massive weapon. Targeting systems locked onto the Vraxian dreadnought, now clearly visible in the darkening sky above Valeria Prime. Power at maximum capacity, Wu reported. Magnetic accelerators primed. Projectile loaded. Mara nodded, her face illuminated by the glow of monitoring stations. Estimated damage? If we score a direct hit on their propulsion systems or weapons array, we could cripple their offensive capability, Wu replied. Not enough to destroy the ship, but enough to hurt them. Commander Tan entered the chamber, his expression grim. Vraxian shuttle is returning to the dreadnought. Looks like diplomatic channels are officially closed. And Counselor Saul? Mara asked.
Under guard in her quarters, Tan reported. She tried to transmit a warning to the Vraxians about our plans. My people intercepted it.
Mara closed her eyes briefly. Saul's betrayal stung, even though she'd half expected it. Make sure she's secure but treated well. We'll deal with that situation after we survive this.
If we survive this,
Tan amended quietly. Mara looked at him sharply. We will, Commander. I made a promise to this colony. To these people. She straightened her shoulders. Status report on evacuation from this facility? Route secured. Team standing by to move all personnel the moment we fire. Good. Mara turned back to the railgun. The weapon dominated the chamber, its barrel extending through a reinforced shaft that led to the surface. Once they fired, the Vraxians would immediately target the launch site with everything they had. One shot, one chance to make a difference. Her communication device chimed. The officer's voice was tight with urgency. Governor, the Vraxian dreadnought is powering up its main cannons. Energy readings are spiking. They're starting early, Tan growled. Mara made her decision. Dr. Wu, commence firing sequence. Wu nodded sharply, fingers flying across the control panel. Capacitors charging. Targeting lock confirmed. His voice took on a rhythmic cadence as he counted down. Firing in 10, 9, 8. Around them, engineers and militia personnel braced themselves. 7, 6, 5. Mara found herself holding her breath. 4, 3, 2. Through the observation monitors, they could see the Vraxian dreadnought's weapon ports glowing with gathering energy. 1, firing! The chamber shook violently as the railgun discharged, the electromagnetic pulse momentarily disrupting lights and equipment. Through the surveillance feed, they watched the hypersonic projectile streak upward, a barely visible blur against the darkening sky. For an agonizing moment, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant flash erupted from the side of the Vraxian dreadnought. The massive ship listed visibly, emergency thrusters firing to stabilize its position. Direct hit, Wu shouted, jubilant. Port weapons array! The command center erupted in cheers, but Mara remained focused. Damage assessment? Wu studied the readings. We've disabled approximately 40% of their offensive capability. Their shields are fluctuating. Wait. His expression fell. They're stabilizing. Auxiliary systems coming online. Can we fire again? Mara demanded. Capacitors recharging, Wu replied. 3 minutes to full power. On the observation screen, smaller Vraxian vessels began to move, taking up defensive positions around the damaged dreadnought. They're triangulating our position, Tan warned. We need to evacuate now. Mara made a split-second decision. Begin evacuation. Dr. Wu, set the second shot on automated sequence. Target their engines. But Governor, Wu protested. "We should be present to make targeting adjustments." "No time," Mara cut him off. "Program it and evacuate with the others. That's an order." Reluctantly, Wu input the commands, setting the railgun to fire automatically once its capacitors reached full charge. As the engineering team rushed toward the exit tunnels, Mara took one last look at the weapon that represented their final hope. They had bloodied the Vraxian's nose, but would it be enough? The evacuation tunnel shook with the impact of Vraxian retaliatory strikes. Dust and debris rained down as Mara, Tan, Wu, and the others made their way toward the secondary command post. "Status of the colony?" Mara shouted over the rumble of distant explosions. "Southern quadrant taking heavy fire," Tan replied, checking his portable comm unit. "Defensive batteries returning fire, but they're targeting them systematically." Another violent tremor nearly threw them off their feet. "That was close," Wu gasped. "Too close," Tan agreed. "They've found the railgun chamber." As if to confirm his words, a massive explosion echoed through the tunnels, the shockwave knocking several people to the ground. "The second shot," Wu said, his voice hollow. "We'll never get it off now." Mara helped him to his feet. "We hurt them, Doctor. That's what matters." They continued forward, finally reaching the secondary command post, a reinforced bunker originally designed as a shelter against Valeria's seasonal radiation storms. Inside, militia officers coordinated defense efforts, while medical personnel treated the wounded. "Governor," a communications officer waved Mara over urgently. "We're receiving a transmission. It's not from the Vraxians." Mara's heart leaped. "The Confederation?" The officer shook her head, looking confused. "No, ma'am. The signal identifier? It's Terran." "Terran," Tan echoed in disbelief. "From Earth?" "Earth, the legendary homeworld of humanity. Now, the center of the Terran Alliance. A power that had remained stubbornly neutral in conflicts between the Confederation and the Vraxian Imperium for generations." "Put it through," Mara ordered. The communication screen flickered, and a human face appeared. A woman with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair, wearing a uniform Mara didn't recognize. "This is Admiral Reyes of the Terran Alliance Armada," the woman announced, her voice crisp and authoritative. "We are responding to distress signals from Valeria Prime. Hold position. Assistance is inbound." Before Mara could respond, the transmission cut out. Could it be a trick? Tan wondered. The Vraxians trying to lure us into the open? "Why would they bother?" Mara countered. "They already have us pinned down." The bunker shook with another impact. Dust filtered down from the ceiling. "Whatever it is," Wu said, "I hope they hurry." The communications officer called out again. "Governor, sensors are detecting multiple new signatures entering the system. They're massive." The main display screen showed a tactical view of Valerian space. Dozens of new contact points had appeared, their approach vectors bringing them directly toward the planet and the Vraxian fleet. "Configuration?" Tan demanded. "Unknown," the officer replied. "But they're moving in formation, definitely military." Mara felt a flutter of hope, quickly suppressed. They'd been disappointed too many times to embrace optimism easily. Minutes ticked by, punctuated by the continuing Vraxian bombardment. Then, suddenly, the impacts stopped. An eerie silence fell over the bunker. "What's happening?" Mara asked. The sensor officer's voice was filled with awe. "The new vessels. They've positioned themselves between us and the Vraxian fleet. They're... Governor. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "On screen," Mara ordered. The tactical display switched to a visual feed from one of the colony's few remaining orbital cameras. The sight took Mara's breath away. A fleet of ships unlike any she had seen before filled the view. Gleaming vessels with sleek lines and pulsing blue engines, arranged in a perfect defensive formation. At their center, a massive flagship dwarfed even the Vraxian dreadnought. Earth's mightiest armada had arrived. The camera zoomed in on the flagship as a transmission cut through every communication channel in the colony. "This is Admiral Elena Reyes of the Terran Alliance Armada," came the now familiar voice. "To Admiral Karv Rax of the Vraxian Imperium. You are engaged in hostile action against a civilian colony. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from this system immediately." After a tense pause, Vrax's reply came through. "This territory has been claimed for the Imperium. The Terran Alliance has no jurisdiction here." "We claim no jurisdiction," Reyes responded coolly. "We respond to humanitarian distress. The colony of Valeria Prime has requested assistance, and the Terran Alliance has chosen to answer." "Chosen now to abandon your precious neutrality?" Vrax's voice dripped with contempt. "This is not your fight, Admiral." "You made it our fight when you targeted civilians," Reyes replied. "The Terran Alliance will no longer stand by while innocent lives are sacrificed to expansionist ambitions, whether Vraxian or Confederation." In the command bunker, everyone held their breath, watching the standoff unfold. "You risk war, Admiral," Vrax warned. "No, Admiral Vrax," Reyes countered. "You do. My fleet outguns yours 3-1. You've already sustained damage to your dreadnought. I offer one chance. Withdraw now, and we will allow your fleet safe passage from this system." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. On the display, the Vraxian vessels remained motionless, facing the Terran Armada across the void. Finally, Vrax responded. "The Imperium will remember this interference. Admiral Reyes, this matter is not concluded." "For today, it is," Reyes said firmly. Slowly, the Vraxian vessels began to move, turning away from Valeria Prime. The dreadnought, still listing slightly from the railgun hit, engaged its engines last, joining the retreat. In the bunker, disbelief gave way to stunned silence, then to cheers that echoed off the walls. Militia personnel embraced. Engineers wept openly. Medical staff sagged with relief. Mara found herself unable to speak, tears stinging her eyes. They had survived. Against all odds. Against an enemy that had outmatched them in every way. Valeria Prime had endured. And they were no longer alone. The days that followed brought a flurry of activity to Valeria Prime. Terran ships established orbit around the planet, their crews assisting with relief efforts and repairs to critical infrastructure. Medical teams treated the wounded. Engineers helped restore power and communication systems. And security forces established a protective perimeter around the colony. Admiral Reyes herself landed to meet with Mara and the colony leadership. In person, the Terran commander was even more impressive, tall and straight-backed, with eyes that reflected decades of experience and a quiet authority that commanded respect without demanding it. "Your resistance was remarkable, Governor Voss," Reyes said as they toured the damaged southern quadrant. "Few colonies have held out against Vraxian forces for as long as you did." "We had no choice," Mara replied simply. "This is our home." Reyes nodded approvingly. "That spirit is why the Alliance Council voted to intervene. For too long, we've watched frontier worlds suffer while the Confederation focused on protecting its core systems." "Why now?" Mara asked the question that had been on her mind since the Armada's arrival. "The Terran Alliance has maintained neutrality for generations. Policy evolves," Reyes said carefully. "Let's just say that certain factions within Alliance leadership have advocated for a more active role in galactic affairs. Your colony's distress call reached sympathetic ears. They passed a group of Terran engineers working alongside Valerians to rebuild a collapsed housing unit. Dr. Wu was among them, gesturing animatedly as he explained something to a Terran officer. "Your Dr. Wu is quite the genius," Reyes observed. "Our technical teams were impressed by his adaptation of those ancient railguns. We've offered him a position as scientific liaison to our engineering corps." "Will he take it?" Mara asked, surprised. "He says he won't leave Valeria," Reyes smiled. But he's happy to consult and share knowledge. That's the kind of collaboration the Alliance seeks to foster. They reached a viewpoint overlooking the colony's central plaza, where Terran medical personnel had established a field hospital. Children played nearby, seemingly untroubled by the military presence, or perhaps comforted by it. "What happens now, Admiral?" Mara asked the question that weighed most heavily on her. "When your fleet leaves, the Vraxians will return, and I doubt the Confederation will suddenly remember our existence." Reyes turned to face her directly. "The Alliance Council has authorized me to offer Valeria Prime Protectorate status. Our fleet would maintain a permanent presence in this sector. Your governance would remain autonomous, but you would receive Alliance protection and development assistance." Mara blinked in surprise. Protectorate status? That would mean leaving the Confederation. "Technically, yes," Reyes acknowledged. "Though I'd argue the Confederation left you first." The bitterness in Mara's laugh surprised even her. "They certainly did." She gazed out over her battered but unbowed colony. "I'll need to put this before our council. It's not a decision I can make alone." "Of course," Reyes agreed. "Take the time you need. My fleet isn't going anywhere." As they continued their tour, Mara's thoughts turned to the future, a future that suddenly held possibilities beyond mere survival. The road ahead would not be easy. Protectorate status would bring its own challenges and complications. But it would also bring security, resources, and a powerful ally against the darkness that lurked at the edge of space. 1 week after the Vraxian retreat, Valeria Prime held a ceremony in the newly restored Central Plaza. Colony residents gathered under the twin suns, their faces upturned to the sky where Terran vessels maintained their protective vigil. On a raised platform, Mara stood beside Admiral Reyes, Commander Tan, and Dr. Wu. Before them, the assembled colony council, including a chastened Counselor Saul, who had been granted amnesty for her actions during the crisis, voted unanimously to accept Terran Alliance Protectorate status. "Citizens of Valeria Prime," Mara addressed the crowd, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering. 1 week ago, we faced extinction. We stood alone against an enemy that sought to crush us, to take our home and our freedom. We fought back with everything we had, refusing to surrender what our ancestors built through generations of sacrifice and determination. She gestured to the Terran officers. When it seemed all hope was lost, we discovered we were not as alone as we believed. The Terran Alliance answered our call when others would not. They have offered us not charity, but partnership, not subjugation, but security. Mara unfolded a document, the Protectorate Agreement, its pages bearing the seals of both Valeria Prime and the Terran Alliance. Today, we begin a new chapter in our colony's history. As a protectorate of the Terran Alliance, we maintain our autonomy while gaining the protection and resources we need to thrive. Our miners will still mine. Our engineers will still build. Our children will still grow. But they will do so without fear of Vraxian dreadnoughts appearing in our skies. She signed the document with a flourish, then passed the pen to Admiral Reyes, who added her own signature. "Let this day be remembered," Mara continued, "not as the day Valeria Prime surrendered its independence, but as the day we secured our future, the day we proved that even the smallest voices in the void can be heard, if they cry out loudly enough." Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing off the colony's buildings and rising toward the sky where Terran vessels hung like stars, visible even in daylight. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Mara stood with Tan and Wu, watching Terran and Valerian personnel mingling freely. "You did it, Governor," Tan said quietly. "You saved the colony." "We all did," Mara corrected him. "Every person who stood their ground, who kept fighting when surrender seemed easier." "What will you do now?" Wu asked. "Admiral Reyes mentioned the Alliance has offered you a diplomatic position." Mara smiled. "I've declined. For now. My place is here, helping Valeria Prime navigate this transition. She looked up at the evening sky, where the first stars were becoming visible. Besides, I have a feeling our story is just beginning. As if to emphasize her words, a formation of Terran fighters streaked across the darkening heavens, their engine trails painting brilliant lines against the backdrop of space. Dr. Wu raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, then, and to never being alone again, Commander Tan added. Mara lifted her own glass, watching the twin suns of Valeria Prime sink toward the horizon, bathing the colony in golden light. In orbit above them, Earth's mightiest Armada maintained its vigilant watch, a promise kept, a future secured. To Valeria Prime, she said simply, may its light never dim,